Well, good morning, fifth graders. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I hope everybody's doing well. So let's see, for this week, this will be Tuesday, April 28th. We're going to do day 4 of your packet. All right, so after this packet this week, we are going to be doing a different packet next week. And as you know, they're also going to have the video lessons this week. Fifth grade, I believe, is on Wednesday at 8:30 for math and Thursday at 8:30 a.m. for reading. So they're going to have the TV viewing at those times this week for you guys. But we're still going to continue the video lessons. I'll be doing them. Mrs. Nash and Mr. Miller will be doing them. So let's take a look at day 4. And it says making inferences in a fictional text. All right, it says an inference is a conclusion you come to based on reasoning and evidence within a text. Making an inference requires using both information from the text and your background knowledge. Read the passage below and answer the inference questions that follow. So you got clues in the text plus what you know equals inference. Remember the example we gave in class? I said, what if you saw a picture of a kite up in the sky? Okay, and then I said to you, what kind of day is it? Okay, so there would be your clues in the text. You see the kite up in the sky, and then what you know, well, you know that a kite can only fly when it's windy. So you just know that from living your life and being exposed to that information. And so the inference that you can make is that it's a windy day. Okay? And you don't have to read that in the text to say it's a windy day. You just know that. You put those clues together. All right, so this is called the Hazelnut Child. Once upon a time, before the continent of Europe was given that name, there lived a couple who had no children. They wished every day for a child, even if he were no bigger than a hazelnut. At last their wish was granted, and they had a child who was the size of a hazelnut, just as they had said. I don't know if you've seen a hazelnut, but you could look that up just to get an image of it so you see how big a hazelnut is, but it's not very big. So you might want to just look that up so you have a reference. But a hazelnut is not big. All right, so let's see. We left off at, and you should be following along with me. So it says, they loved the child very much and they took excellent care of him. When the hazelnut child turned 15, his parents asked what he would become now that he was of an age to work. I would like to be a messenger, said the child. His mother laughed and asked, how can you possibly be a messenger? Your tiny feet would take an hour to carry you the distance anyone else could cover in a minute. Give me the message to carry, said the boy, and see how quickly I return. So his mother told him to go to the house of his aunt in the neighboring village and bring back a comb. I'll be back before you know, said the boy. His mother held the front door open for her son, and off he went on his journey. He found a man on horseback who was headed for the next town. The boy crept up the horse's leg, crawled under the saddle, and began to pinch the horse's back. Rearing up, the horse took off at a breakneck speed and wouldn't slow down, no matter how hard the rider pulled at its reins. When they reached the neighboring village, the hazelnut child quit pinching the horse, and it slowed enough that the boy was able to climb back down his leg. His aunt was delighted to see him and gave him the comb he asked for. The hazelnut child returned home on the back of another horse and presented his mother with the comb. "But how did you get home so quickly?" she asked. He did not answer her question, but only said, "You see, I told you messenger was the profession for me." Using his newfound skill, the hazelnut child hitched a ride on a stork that was astonished. Oh no, I'm sorry, I skipped a whole line. Using his newfound skill, the hazelnut child hitched a ride on a stork that was heading south for the winter and landed in a faraway country. There he met the king, who was astonished by this tiny creature who rode storks as if they were horses. The king was so taken with the hazelnut child that he gave the boy a diamond bigger than himself. The boy hitched the diamond to his stork and flew home, and he and his parents lived in peace and prosperity for the rest of their lives. All right, so let's take a look, and we're going to make some inferences, and we do this a lot in class, in my small group and in Mr. Miller's and Miss Nash's, where we use context clues to match each vocabulary word to its definition. All right, so I'm going to read the definitions, and then we'll go back I'll read both the word and the definitions, and we'll go back up and figure out which is which. All right, so a paid occupation or job. So is that crept, profession, astonished, prosperity? Wealth or good fortune, crept, profession, astonished, prosperity. Move slowly and quietly to avoid being noticed, crept, profession, astonished, prosperity. Greatly surprised or impressed, crept, profession, astonished, prosperity. So what you can do is go back up, and I believe they're all bolded. So here is C-R-E-P-T, crept, and it's in a bold print. So let's reread it. The boy crept up the horse's leg, crawled under the saddle, and began to pinch the horse's back. So you think about crept. What does that mean if he crept up the horse's leg? Okay, so you decide whether that's a paid occupation or job, wealth or good fortune, move slowly and quietly to avoid being noticed, greatly surprised or impressed. All right, profession. Let's look back at profession. Here it is. So that we go back to the beginning of the sentence, all the way back to here. He did not answer her question, but only said, "You see, I told you messenger was the profession for me." And you can remember back up here, she asked him what he wanted to do. Okay, up here. His parents asked what he would become now that he was of an age to work. "I would like to be a messenger." Okay, all right. And then astonished. There he met the king, who was astonished by this tiny creature who rode storks as if they were horses. And then prosperity. We'll go back all the way to the beginning of the sentence. The boy hitched the diamond to his stork and flew home, and he and his parents lived in peace and prosperity for the rest of their lives. All right, so draw a line to match those up. Making inferences. Complete the chart by writing a quote from the text on this text on the left, or an inference you can make on the right. All right, so it says, they wished every day for a child, even if he were no bigger than a hazelnut. What can you infer about the couple who later became the hazelnut child's parents? All right, so they wished every day for a child, even if he were no bigger than a hazelnut. What do you think that is saying about this couple and how badly they want a child? Okay, so this tells you that they want a child very badly. Okay, all right. Write a quote from the story that supports this inference. All right, so here they gave you the inference. They want a quote from the story that supports it. The hazelnut child was determined to prove that he could accomplish his goals despite his small size. So let's go back up in the story and see where he okay, so remember when his mom said, how can you possibly be a messenger? Your tiny feet would take an hour to carry you the distance anyone else could cover in a minute. Okay, so do you see this? He says, give me a message to carry and see how quickly I return. And then he says, I'll be back before you know. Okay, so he is determined. He's very bright and determined to show that he is going to be able to be a messenger. He has very unique and creative ways of getting those messages around, doesn't he? So write that quote there that we just talked about, where you think that he's determined to prove that he could accomplish his goals. All right, the king was so taken with the hazelnut child that he gave the boy a diamond bigger than himself. All right, what can you infer about the king? All right, so let's see. Let's go back up here. All right, the king, okay, he met the king, who was astonished by this tiny creature who rode storks as if they were horses. The king was so taken with the hazelnut child that he gave the diamond boy a diamond bigger than himself. So, okay, so, all right, so what can you infer about the king? Well, he was so taken with the hazelnut child that he gave him a huge diamond. Obviously, the king was very impressed with this hazelnut child, so he gave him this big diamond. All right, let's take a look at the next page now. Okay, let's see. It says mix it up, making varied sentences. Okay, this is a really important skill that we make interesting sentences, not all just short, simple sentences. So there's nothing wrong with simple sentences. We can make those too, but we also want to make compound and complex sentences. So a simple sentence, it has one complete thought. It may have multiple subjects and predicates and some description words. So the hungry baby cried for the cold rice cereal. Okay, that's a simple sentence. A compound sentence has two complete thoughts combined by a conjunction. So let's look at this one. It has two verbs and may also have some description words. All right, the baby cried for the cold rice cereal and then she laughed. So that's a little bit more complex or involved than just a simple sentence. It has two complete thoughts. The baby laughed and the baby cried for the cereal. And then a complex sentence, it has one complete thought and added phrases to add description, sometimes separated by a comma. A complex sentence always has a subordinator, as, because, since, after, although, when, or relative pronouns who, that, which. Okay, so that one's a little bit more involved, okay? All right, so, okay, they didn't give you an example here, but I'm going to explain one to you. Here, let me type it, because then it'll look better. Hold on one second. Okay, here's an example of a complex sentence. Okay, so whoops. All right, so this says, although he was wealthy, he was still unhappy. Okay, so a complex sentence always has one of these words in it. So for instance, although. Okay, that they always have one of these, when or because or since. So for instance, because my coffee was too cold, I heated it in the microwave. Okay, or she returned the computer after she noticed it was damaged. Okay, so that's an example of a complex sentence. So use the reminders above, create a short story that includes at least 3 of each kind of sentence. When done, swap stories with a partner and use a highlighter or colored pencils to identify each kind of sentence in your partner's story. Well, you don't have a partner there to do that, but you can write a story, use 3 simple sentences, at least 3 compound sentences, and 3 complex sentences. All right? All right, let's move on and see what we have next. All right, recognize a fragment when you see one. All right, a fragment is not a complete thought, okay? So it says, read each example below. Circle whether it is a sentence or a fragment. If it is a fragment, make revisions to turn it into a complete sentence. Okay, so every sentence has to have a subject and a verb. And if it doesn't, then it's a fragment. So let's take a look at this. After the doctor examined the broken arm, which was broken in 2 places. Okay, now even though that is long, it is a fragment. Let me explain to you why. Okay, so even though that's a very long sentence, looks like it's going to be a real sentence, it isn't. This is a fragment. The reason it is it doesn't have a complete thought. It says, after the doctor examined the broken arm, which was broken in 2 places. Well, what did the doctor do after he examined? This is a complex sentence because remember it has after in it. So after the doctor examined the broken arm, which was broken in 2 places, then it needs to say, what did he do? So rewrite that, and let's see, we'll go to a text. Hold on. Let me go here, and I'll show you. Okay, so after the doctor examined the broken arm, which was broken in 2 places, he put a cast on it. Okay, now that's a complete thought. Okay, after the doctor examined the broken arm, which was broken in 2 places, he put a cast on it. So this is a fragment, and you have to tell what the doctor did. Okay? All right. Let's move on to the next one. During the baseball game, in the third inning to be exact, again, what happened during the 3rd inning? It doesn't tell you. This also is a complex sentence. It starts with during. You can always go back. I'm going to take this off, even though you'll still keep it on your thing. So here are these complex. Let's see, where are they? Subordinators. Okay, so all right, it isn't in here, but during is also one of these. So during. Okay, that should have been one of those 2. I mean, it says. These are just examples. There are others. So let's see. Hold on. During is another one. D-U-R. I haven't done this all weekend, so now look, I have to get back into it. Oh dear. All right. So during. Oh, and I can't move up without taking this off. So, oh my goodness. Here, during. Okay, so during the baseball game, in the 3rd inning to be exact, and then you should have a comma here and tell what happened during the baseball game in the 3rd inning to be exact. You could say Robert hit a home run. Okay, so that would be, make it a complete thought. So you would have a comma here. So during the baseball game in the 3rd inning to be exact, that this is a comma rather than a period there. Hold on. So, okay, comma, Robert hit a home run. Hit a home run. Okay, so that was actually a fragment. So you can see that even though it's long and it has several words, it doesn't make it a sentence unless it's a complete thought. Oh, oops, I can't spell home run. R-U-N. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's see. Let's look at one more. I'll read the rest and then you can fix those. We took the short way to get to the store. All right, even though that one is shorter than either of these two, this one is a complete sentence. It's a complete thought. We took the short way to get to the store. So be careful about that. Just because the sentence is short does not mean that it's not a complete thought. And just because something is long and looks like a sentence, it can be a fragment. You have to make sure that they are complete thoughts, okay? All right, so I'm going to move this up and I'm going to read the last, oh, there's only two left. So I'm going to leave those for you to do. I'll read them, but then you're going to mark them. His ex-girlfriend Samantha, the one he dated 5 years ago. Well, is that a complete thought? Think about that and whether you need to fix it. His ex-girlfriend Samantha, the one he dated 5 years ago. What about the ex-girlfriend Samantha? All right, and then the last one, they're not numbered. A meteor from a galaxy 67 light years away. What about it? It doesn't tell. What about the meteor from a galaxy 67 light years away? Okay, so that's not a complete thought. So fix that and make that a complete thought. I just gave you a hint. All right, guys, that's it for Tuesday, April 28th. And I'm going to put the math on a separate video because some of you only come for math. All right, see you tomorrow.